Well, this is Baruch here at the Tikkun Elevator Kollel, and we're on page Shin Kaf Gimel. Now, this is what I used to call the morning Zohar, but I stopped doing it in the morning, so I couldn't call it any more. This morning Zohar, but this is the morning, early morning here. So we're on page Shin Kaf Gimel, as I said before, and what the Zohar has been saying up to this point has to do with Gilgul, reincarnation, or being the neshama, which is really the principal, this is what the Zohar is saying, the neshama is really the principal component of a person, although it's buried inside of a body which is physical and is demanding. You have to eat 3 times a day if you live in this culture, and you have to continuously eat and procreate and do all of these things that have to do with your body. But hidden inside of that is a neshama. And he said that a person who's messed up his life, who, in other words, has committed averas, which is not easy to avoid in a world as difficult as ours. So that person has 6 times. That's the concept of the slave who was served for 6 years. So he says 6 times, and if it doesn't work out, and say the 6 times that he's able to affect the tikkun, then this is telling us that life is purposeful. And so therefore we have to think in terms of what we have to accomplish in life. It's not so easy to do it in the quagmire of the world in which we live. But here we come over to a different type of person. So he says that he also added that the concept of the yichudim that take place when people are zvugim, when people live together, husband and wife live together, depends on whether it's weekdays, this is a concept here now, or whether it's on Shabbos. So in those neshamos who are born from the olamos abriya, yitzira, and asiya, that comes from weekday yichud. There's also Shabbos diku yichud. Now the whole thing is a big metaphor, but it also is a practical part too. So he said this is a very high level, is to be able to have a yichud on Shabbos night after midnight. He says it's many other places. So he said, let's read the Zohar now, and let's see if we can get through, because he's going to explain the secret right straight out at the bottom. But if a person's neshama does not come from olamos bia, but instead comes from Atzilus, the ihi shvius, which is the 7th. Malchus is the 7th Sevira if you start from Chesed. So this is why it says when you get to that level, to the level of the 7th, which is the Shekhinah, the tzaddik vaday liz bei malacha, that the tzaddik doesn't really have, the problems in this world, came into les bei malacha, les bei she'ivut. So if a person is not working, or he doesn't, I'm not sure what malacha means here, is not working, then he's not indentured, he can't be enslaved. So a neshama that comes from the word olam atzilus, he says, v'tamen itmar ba, it says in regards to the v'shvis, so if you came from that 7th level, malchus yetzid achaf shechina, and the person goes out free, owes nothing. Les bei shivuda, this person never becomes indentured. Now, let's look at the Matak B'Devash, and you can see, the Rashi print coming up down below, and there you're going to explain the concepts. So he says a little bit, very clearly. So if it's carved out mitzad the Shekhinah, notice the word carved out. Hashkina shehis svirach hashvihis mechazat atzilus, from the Chesed Gevurah Tiferes Netzach Yesod, and then the 7th one is Malchus. He says, "Sheneshama gazul nimshacha ayudah zivuk shen asa b'leil Shabbos." And this comes from a yichud that takes place on the night of Shabbos. B'neshama gazul. So if you have a neshama like this, pirish adam kazesh nishmaso mahashchina. So a person like this who has a neshama that comes from the Shekhinah, shehi shivis, which is the 7th Sfira. So the person, there's a lot of chances for the person to mess up. Even to know that it's possible for that person to become into the same kind of problems that people who have yichud and they born out of a yichud or the daytime, the weekdays. Im kol ze yetze chofshi lechinum. So with all of that, the person goes out free. So he said, Pirish lo yishta'avid begugula, he will not become indentured in this Gilgul. Now, what does he mean by all of this? So he says, V'time hadavar, so the reason why, that tzaddik vadai lis be melocha. Now, what does that mean? This translates simply that the tzaddik doesn't have to do work. That's not key. Hayisod and nikra tzaddik. Now he comes to the sod. So what is, in fact, tzaddik? Tzaddik represents the yisod, which is the sixth sphera. He said, "Vadai ein bo malachas habarur shal neshamot." Now, I think he means habirur. So he says that it doesn't have to go through the process of being in the klipa and then trying to get out, which is really the concept of, in other words, the neshama is really caught in the world of physicality and trying to get out. Because it brings down new neshamas, neshamas from really the fount, where that's the shorish of where neshamas called of neshamas below b'makom abira. Let me just explain this one more time. That after the shvira, everything that is all of the kedusha, main part of the seven spheros of kedusha, fall. They fall into olamos bia. That's a creation of bia right there. B'riyitzia nesiya. But since this neshama doesn't come from bia, it comes from etzilus instead. She'ein bo melechas habara birur. So it doesn't have to go through the process of being refined out of the very difficult place, which is Bibriya Yitzir Nasi. In other words, the lower worlds, the outer worlds, the worlds that are far from the far are buried and far from the Ein Sof. Because so therefore the person is not involved in become a denture to the klipos because they're not able to get a hold of this at all, because we're saying that the light of Olam Atzilut is too great for them and they can't really grasp. The neshama that comes from him, that is carved out from the Shechinah itself, which is reeling, is receiving. He says these words. He says, what happens with Malchus of Atzilus, is that it receives neshamos chadashos miyisod. In other words, a complete new kind of fresh neshama. And it says it like this: Uvishviz yetzechashi chinum. What do those words mean? Pirish leish be shi'u v'shivuda. This person is never meshubed to the klipos, and as a result of that, so he said, "Ve'ein ba she'ivul malacha klal." Therefore, this work that a person has to do to refine themselves, to be able to bring up sparks of kedusha out of the world in which they are born. Ela tistakein b'masha oisik b'torah mitzvah. So therefore, this person who's born from Olam Atzilus into this world is going to have a tikkun that is going to she'oisik b'torah by just learning Torah and tefillah. Now let's go to this the part of the bottom a moment as fast as I can, so we can keep it as concise as possible. It says, "So the inyan hu." During the day, weekdays, mashpia nefesh ma'oven, it pours out a nefesh in this way, pirish ma'asiyah. So, excuse me, I mistranslated. He says, hachol, the person has yichud as a result of the process of a yichud during the weekday. He said, mashpia nefesh ma'ofen. It brings out a nefesh. Open is a wheel from just the regular physical cycle. So if you listen to the shiurim that are on Yaakov Cronenberg, he's only talking about this, the cycles of Olam HaYitziyah, Asiyah. V'ruach Mesitra, the Eved, a Pirish, so he has a nefesh that comes from the world of wheels, or cycles, which is us. V'ruach Mesitra, but the breath that he breathes is Pirish, it's come from Olam Yitzira. That's the side of the Eved. Who's the Eved? The Eved is Matat, and the name is called Matat. The neshama B'briya gets a neshama from Briya. So since the creation of this person and his essence of the neshama is flowing down during the weekdays from weekday yichud, B'chem malacha, so he says, Shena'az b'chem malacha l'chein k'shuz galhu b'olam hazeh. So therefore, in other words, these are the days of work, where a person has to constantly work on himself. Is not Shabbos. And then the neshama from that yichud comes into this world, pam acheres, another time, yesh bo shiva malacha. So if it comes back into the world again, I don't know, it said another time. Let me get it. I'm trying to go a little bit too fast. Another time when it has to come back. Yesh bo shiva malacha. So the person doesn't, the person born from the weekday yichud, and he doesn't come, he commits an avera, so he has to come back again, this person. Ozeres es ha'adam b'drishas ha'devarim v'gashmim v'ozeru b'kol malachos ha'chol. So because a person has to go through, I guess, I'm not sure what this means. Ayidei shuhu ozeres es ha'adam, because the weekday, he's talking about the malacha. It helps a person, but the rishas of the varm, he has to seek out different things, dashmin, that are physical, and so he's busy divided into workday problems. So this person becomes indenture to different kind of pains, and illnesses, and medalas, and poverty, and so he has to travel around, and he gets beaten up. Now I looked up this word nelevis, and it said that it was meant like insulting. It becomes an insult, an insult. The nifgemis are it's insulting. I'm not sure if that's the right word. The nifgemis, and it becomes flawed. Because once you're involved deeply in the world, so you want to make money, you want to have a big car, you want to have this, and all these different things. They require really real effort. And in the meantime, the person gets involved in all kinds of difficult stuff. So the chein after shedesham zotis galgal kama pa'amim adas shetis'uken. So he said, therefore, this person who's caught in the web of physicality, which is the weekday, he said this person has to go through a lot of things in order to rebuild himself. He says, Amna mazivika na'asa b'Shabbos, but now this is different. If a person has yichud, and we say from Leil Shabbos, this is in the Talmud, this is every place, mashbira nefesh d'chatzilus bas melech malchus. So this person is now, his nefesh is coming from Olam Atzilus. This is the place of the bas melech, the daughter of the king, which is another word for malchus, all of these words. V'adam shezocha l'nefesh d'Atzilus, a person who's born into this world with a nefesh of Atzilus, afilu intis gagel, even if the person goes through a Gilgul, ein bo shivud avam v'lo malacha, this person never becomes indentured, meaning never has to fight his way out of the klipa. El neshalamas ayidecha b'masa adam b'teirach mitzvahs, but this person completes his tikkun as a result of learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. So it doesn't really stand him as if like he's indentured to it. Or with him, going after something which is really unsavory. But this person, it's really very unlikely, or very much like, that this person will not sin. Because he doesn't generate sin. He's not a weekday kind of working on the body all the time. So the person, God forbid, he comes to a place where he can make a serious sin. Mistalak on the shama v'tivrach b'mena, then his stomach, I guess he means he'll die, the stomach will run away from it. Shelo tischalek tislach ba'avon, so that the person should be corrupted and made filthy with this by the sin. For all of the ambacha b'yetze the chav shechinah, so that's where it says he goes out free, doesn't owe anything. Pirush she'enim is galgul alapam achas, so this person will only have one gilgul. He'll only have to come back one time. Even though that the person messed up and he died. And as they come, the neshama has to come back again. Even so, the gam oz who believe shiva v'tarach, the person is not really indentured into physicality. Being lo the sake b'pamazos, and if the person doesn't make a tikkun in the second time because the neshama came from such a high place, lo yizgagol shenis, he will not come back a second time. Eli yakabel onsho b'gehenim, but he'll receive his just reward in Gehenna. This is Baruch Fleischman, and this has been the Parshas Zohar used to be the morning Zohar at the Tikkun Elevator Kola.